Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of season 3, episode 12 of Youth Empowerment Radio. I am your host, Carmen, and today I'm continuing my conversation with Amber Hollingsworth, an addictions counselor. If you haven't listened to part 1, episode 11 yet, I recommend starting there. In this episode, Amber and I dive deeper into substance use, specifically marijuana. Amber walks me through how marijuana is different from other substances. She also shares with us some recommendations for how we can support a young person with an addiction. Thank you all for your support. We hope you enjoy part 2 of this conversation.
So I want to kind of zoom into marijuana a bit because marijuana's become quite interesting to me. It's similar to alcohol in the sense that it's become quite socially acceptable.
Yeah, maybe even more so than alcohol.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think maybe more so, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've heard it framed as like quote unquote safe or like not as bad as fill in whatever blank you want.
Right.
But I'm curious, like how does marijuana use, how does it affect young people? What's the other side of this story, right? Or this narrative behind it?
Well, early in my career, when I first started out, which was with teenagers for years and years and years, they would say, weed isn't addictive. Not, I'd hear that all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll say, well, maybe it's psychologically addictive, but not physically.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say this to them, but my argument would be the physical addiction to anything isn't the problem. It's the psychological addiction. Because you can get anybody off of anything physically in 5 days. That's not the issue. But anyway, that's I don't hear that as much anymore because I think because it's legal, like it's legal where you are. I think it's not legal where I am, but like people have access to it on a different level. So these days, I think people smoke marijuana like they used to smoke cigarettes in the 80s, like all day, every day. And they're very, very dependent on it. And so when that happens, when you're a teen, a lot of times you eventually, maybe you did it to be with friends or whatever, for whatever reasons to start, whatever. But then you start using it to cope, right? And most of the time, kids will say, it's the only thing that helps my anxiety. What they don't realize is that it is the thing that's making your anxiety increasingly worse. Very, very difficult to get kids, or I'm not even gonna say kids, anyone, adult, I don't care how old you are, to see how marijuana's impacting you because it impacts you so slowly. If you go out and you start doing a bunch of cocaine or pain pills, your life's probably going to spin out of control fairly fast, even just the money of it, right? And just like you're going to have unmanageability. With marijuana, it's not doing anything to you like right here in this moment. Not even like alcohol, like you drink and then you go and you text your ex-girlfriend and you say things you shouldn't have said, and then you regret it like you would on alcohol. Like, so it changes your chemistry a little at a time. The best way I know how to explain it is like, it's like when you're in the ocean. If you're ever in the ocean and you're like a kid and you're like playing and you see your parents up on the sand, you're like, hey, look at my trick or whatever. And you're not paying attention. And then you look up and you're like, oh my God, they left me. Right? And because you can't find them, but you didn't feel the current was pulling you down the shoreline, right? You just look up and it's like they left me. That is what it's like with teenagers and marijuana. You just look up and the rest of your peers have moved on with life and you haven't. And then you're more depressed because of that. And then you're using it more. The people I see of any age that are addicted to marijuana are the most depressed. They're more depressed and anxious than like the ones on the hardcore drugs, the ones we consider the hardcore. Really difficult to get people to stop. Not because it's the hardest drug to stop, but because it's the hardest drug to get people to see that they need to stop.
Interesting. Wow. There's so much to unpack there. That's so interesting. The subtlety that
connect the dot to the negative consequence because it happens slowly over a long course of time. Whereas when we're stealing to pay for pain pills, we can connect that dot. When we get drunk and we make out with somebody we shouldn't have been, you cheated on her. We can connect that dot because I was drunk. With marijuana, there are major consequences, but you're not connecting them. You'll notice that you feel more anxious. You'll notice that you're unhappy. You'll all these things, but you won't realize that that's why that is happening.
I see. And it sounds like one of the reasons is because there's not that dramatic like spike.
Yes.
You know, like when you get really drunk or you take a really hard substance. Yeah, like the way people have described it to me has been like there's that big jolt and you're like that's where all the shit happens, you know, and then like with this it sounds like it's kind of more just like this and then your baseline for quote unquote normal gets slowly higher and higher. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's definitely physically dependent. To all those teenagers who are now adults now, definitely can be. I mean, and anyone who smokes a lot knows, like, eventually you need to smoke to go to sleep. Eventually you need to smoke to eat food. So there's no, like, it's changing your chemistry over the long course of time. It's just, I always say it's the bane of my existence. It's the hardest thing I treat.
Is there a difference in between, because I've seen vapes become really popular and as opposed to like a joint that you roll. And I've heard people say vapes are better for you because the THC content is lower. I don't really know how they
like the same way maybe they say vapes are better for you than cigarettes.
Like, yeah, I think so. Okay. Yeah. And do you know, I know I'm sort of putting you on the spot here, but do you know anything kind of about that? Is there some like logic to that or?
I don't know about it from like more like a medical kind of standpoint, although there's lots of evidence now that it's really bad. It's not the safe alternative we thought from nicotine. But from a psychological perspective, I think it's worse because when you're vaping it, you could do it anytime, anywhere, and no one even knows. It sets you up to be doing it more regularly with more access.
Yeah, that makes sense. The regularity, the access. It is really subtle. Like I'll be in a restaurant and like it's pretty wild, like how many people I see that will vape inside of a restaurant and then you don't really even notice it until you're like really paying attention. Whereas like with like rolling a joint or like smoking a cigarette, you go outside. It's like, and that's sometimes the barrier to get you to not do it, you know?
The word. Yeah, that's the perfect word out. Yeah, you hit it. That's why I'm going to vote on, I think the vapes are, but like I said, I don't know what the research is.
No, it was interesting. No, I appreciate your thoughts. I know I put you on the spot. There. Oh, this is so good. Wow. I want to pivot too into kind of support and recovery because I know you do focus a lot on support, especially on your podcast.
Yes.
So I'm curious, how can friends, family members, even providers, you know, we work with a lot of nonprofits, work with young people, maybe to help them get housed or help them get support. And some of which are, you know, are addicted to something, you know, how might they support a young person? How can we support a young person in their life?
If you care about somebody, especially a young person, and you're worried about them, you're going to have the instinct to confront the issue. And you may even be thinking, I'm just going to have a heart-to-heart with my bestie. When you confront it directly like that, they're always going to be defensive. Now, depending on their personality, they may or may not say those defensive thoughts to you. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, you're right, blah, blah, and shake their head. But in their head, they're going to be defensive because they feel called out. So what happens is it puts the other person, the concerned person, in the bad guy role. Shifts the dynamic between the concerned person and like the young person or whatever. And then that's when even more sneaking and lying and hiding. And then that develops into this giant power struggle, this cat and mouse game, this I'm trying to hide, I'm trying to catch you, which really like takes us in the wrong direction. It just blows the whole thing up. So I would say be very, very, very careful and strategic about how you have the conversation, because 9 times out of 10, people, even with the best of intentions, are not helping. And a lot of times,
What would being careful and strategic about how you broach the subject? What would that look like?
well, the way I like to think about it, and I guess because I'm visual, I always just sort of see things a certain way, but like, you don't want to try to push information in. Anybody that has a problem or a concern, it's already in there. They already know it. Like, do not try to send them articles. Do not try to do anything. Don't put information in. Pull information out. The person already knows the truth. And if you can be a safe person for them, they'll tell you that truth that you're trying to get them to hear. But if you're trying to tell it to them, it just immediately puts a person in a position to defend what they're doing, even if they know it's wrong, even if they know they shouldn't be doing it, even if they're concerned about themselves. If you're confronting someone or calling someone out, or expressing your concern or whatever you want, they're going to defend it. They're going to think, oh my gosh, you overreact on everything. It's not that big of a deal. Like, everyone does it. Like, you're just overly anxious and you think everything's going to end. These are the thoughts they have, because it's like a human reflex. We're all like that. Like, let's say you have a problem being late to work, and you show up late to work for the millionth time, and your boss like says, hey Amber, you really gonna have to work on this. Like, it's not okay. What is my, even though I know I messed up, like, kind of mean choice, I'm gonna think, you don't understand. I have kids and there was traffic. That's what I'm gonna think. When you come at someone in a way that makes them think that, they're convincing themselves as they think about it and as they say it. Now it's like hardening in their brain, this denial, this minimization of the problem. Do not want to say words to people that's going to cause them to say something against what you're trying to get them.
That makes sense. It's like, rather than trying to push your agenda across, try to understand and see and hear them is really what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Right, because they have, even if they don't think it's a problem, they have some reservations about it. They have some concerns about it, right? And if you're a safe enough person, they'll verbalize that to you, and that helps them figure it out faster. Like for example, you're asking me about like teens and marijuana use. Like, one of the ways I deal with that with kids is I'll say, they'll say, do you think it's I'll say, do you think it's a problem? Your mama drug you in here. She thinks it's a problem. Is it a problem? And they'll say, no, gosh, she's just like that. She's so uptight or whatever, It's like, listen, a drug is a drug. I don't care what drug it is. Like, I don't have a problem with it. It's just that sometimes people get too attached to different drugs. So it's not the weed, it's not the alcohol, the addiction part. So I'll say, have you ever known anybody that's been addicted to weed? And they'll say, oh, yeah. And I'll say, well, how did you know they're addicted? And I'll have them explain to me about this person. Well, they're 45 and they're still living in their parents' basement. They're so old and they're still coming to our high school parties, and that's really lame. I'll say, yeah, I think you're right. That's a pretty good sign something's wrong. And then I'll say, how would you know if you started crossing over into the line of like problematic or like addiction even? And they'll tell me. They'll say things like, well, if I start skipping all my classes, if my girlfriend breaks up with me, because if I'm spending all my money on it, I'll have them say these things to me, so that if and when they cross those lines, they're going to be acutely aware of it. They said it. And it doesn't matter what lines they say. If it's addiction, they'll cross the lines. I don't care what they say. I don't care if they say, well, as long as I'm not smoking more than 50 times a day, if it's addiction, you're going to cross the line. Having them name the lines that they see as true lines and important, what it does is it just makes them very aware if and when that happens, as opposed to me saying, this is what addiction looks like, and I'm seeing these symptoms in you. That just doesn't work.
That's so true. Like, even in my own life, it's always so much more powerful and potent when the idea or the thought or the sensation or whatever it is comes from me and from myself. And I think also within that example is, I think also in a way, we all have different ways of defining what addiction means in my life. and like to allow a young person or whoever to define that for themselves, you know, I think is really important because we're all not perfect little boxes that fit into these criterias, you know.
Right. And if somebody
Yeah.
else names the criteria and it doesn't mean anything to them, it's done, you haven't done anything. That's why I say it has to be their lines in the sand and it has to come from them. And it doesn't matter what the lines are, but you're just trying to get them to sort of see, you know, or you can talk to them, you know, about their values and the things they care about. And then that makes them really aware of their own values, which makes them aware when they're crossing their values. That's the way I go about helping like get someone out of denial or make decisions to try something different. And you may think it's not because the person maybe every time you try to talk to them about it, they just say whatever. Maybe they're super cowboy about it and they're just like, I'm gonna do it till I die. You know, I can drink you under the table. I don't care how big talking someone is. All you gotta do is ask this question. Yeah, I can see why you like it. It's kind of cool in this way or whatever. And then I might say, is there anything about it you don't like? And whether they answer me out loud or not, their brain will answer the question. Them aware, well, I don't like this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, I can see that being a helpful approach. Yeah. Well, as we kind of pivot to closing out, I just have a couple of last questions for you. Yeah, one is specific to like if there was one thing or a couple things that you wish a young person knew about addiction, what would that be?
I wish they understood more what the symptoms look like when you get addicted. Like, I'm not a fan of like the whole just say no and the scare tactic. You can't scare a teenager. You can only scare adults, and that's because bad things have happened to us. So we're very aware that bad things can happen to us. Teenagers, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they understood what those middle symptoms look like because they only see it as someone that's addicted, like on a movie, you know, they're like on the couch DTing or whatever, so that they could understand what's happening along the way, insight and the self reflection to sort of see it happen and choose to do.
So kind of like before it gets to the point where it's so bad and so dependent. Yeah.
Right. Like being aware of like how much are you thinking about it, right? Like are you giving up other things for it? Are people around you getting annoyed with you about this whatever the thing? You know, like what are some of these earlier symptoms that they're probably not even thinking in their head as addiction? Like these are the signs that we're moving in that direction. This is when you can stop. You know, because people say, "Well, I can stop. I'm not addicted." I'm like, no, it doesn't mean you're not addicted. It means you can't stop once you start. Like you go over your limit. If you could recognize it earlier, you probably could keep from hitting a lot of bottom.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm also curious if there's one thing or a couple things you wish adults knew about helping support a young person struggling with this.
You have to figure out what's important to that young person, and not what's important to you. So send them PowerPoints with black lungs or, you know, drunk driving accident articles in the newspaper or whatever, you know, or if you live in a state where it's illegal or whatever. Like those are not good lawyering points. You have to think about what's important to your kid, right? Like, and then help them see, pull it out of them versus say where they're crossing their own lines, where they're doing things that they don't like. It's making them feel bad about them versus trying to push these external things out on them because they're just going to roll their eyes at you. You ruin credit when you do that. I call it building credit with someone because people aren't going to listen to you unless they think that you get them, like really get them. Do you love them? Because your grandmama loves you, but you might not listen to your grandmama's advice if you think she doesn't get you. Right? Like listen to like your bestie's advice because you think she gets you, right? Like so you have to build that kind of credit with the person that you're trying to help. And when you say stupid things like that, you literally destroy your credit. Like think about like, oh, you just went bankrupt. It's going to take you a long time to dig out of that hole.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that phrase. Build your credit, build your rapport, get rid of your agenda.
It's like build your credibility. Like if someone's telling you, well, this substance does this good thing for me, and you're so scared to agree that it does anything good because you just want them to see the bad, and you deny the good thing, you just ruined your credit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not seeing them.
You're
Yeah.
not seeing them, and you're trying to scare them, and now they're like, oh my gosh, you just like that about everything. And then you're disqualified
Mm-hmm.
as a source of helpful information.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good point. I feel like that's so relatable. We can translate that to any time in our life where someone's tried to push something down our throats, so to speak, you know, and a lot of people's instinct is like, I'm just going to go away. Like they're repulsed by it. Like, it's like, no, like, you know, and
it's like a reflex. No one wants to be controlled, even a 2-year-old. Like,
yeah,
we all want our autonomy. We don't like to be pushed or forced to do things or make certain decisions. We rebel against it. So, especially if someone's addicted, like, you do not want to come at it directly, blow up on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Amber. Well, I always love to end with this question. And it's, what 3 books would you recommend? And they don't necessarily have to be about this topic, but
okay.
Yeah.
Hard one. Most of this is super lame and nerdy, but most of the books I read are like, they're not fiction books. They're like learning to do something, or like a business book or a self-improvement book or something.
I love those books.
It's super like nerdy though. So I don't know that I have any good answers. Like, the books I would listen to just for like pleasure would be like, when I'm on a road trip, I'll listen to like crazy Stephen King or something like that. Wild out there. I'm like a true crime like person or whatever. So
yeah. Gotcha.
I could give you some business books if you want.
Yeah, totally. Go for it. I'm writing them down. This is maybe more for me than my audience. Okay. Who knows?
One that I really liked in the past couple of years is called 10x is easier than 2x.
10x is easier than 2x.
Right. And that has to do with like doing a little bit better is much harder than like infinitely multiplying what you're doing. Like, and it's just like a different way of thinking. Mm-hmm. There's another book similarly, and it's called Scaling or Scaling Up.
Scaling Up.
Yeah. It might just be scaling, but it could be scaling up. And then there's a crazy book I read a bunch of years ago called 10x something. Like the number 10, 10x.
Oh, 10x. Okay.
Yeah. And it's written by this, because I listen to books. I'm ADD, so I listen. It's written by this guy who really has a really out there personality, and he reads the book. So he's like in your ear, and he's like super like, you take responsibility for you. You know, it's like one of those, like, you're like, yes, sir. You know, like,
like, yes, sir. No, like, sir.
If this happens, that's your fault. You take responsibility. You know, and it's like, I don't know. It's just like wild. And probably it's just partly like him reading it to you. It's like, whoa, dude. Yeah.
It sounds very motivational, sergeant-y. Yeah. Yeah. Well, Amber, thank you so much for this rich conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Carmen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if folks want to kind of stay in touch with what you're doing, how can they do that?
You can find me anywhere. You can put my name in. It's Amber Hollingsworth. Best place to find me is on my YouTube channel. So Put the Shovel Down. There's so many resources, no matter what side of this, whether you're trying to address something yourself, you're trying to help someone else. It really looks at it from every angle. It's free. There's like literally like 1,500 videos or something crazy.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot on there to look through.
Yeah.
Love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amber.
Thank you.